Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from NASCAR.info coming at you after the conclusion of the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas, where for the second consecutive week to start off the playoffs, a non-playoff driver has cruised into victory lane, and even more impressive, I guess, it's hard really to find the right words. It's the same team that won the spring race, and Bubba Wallace now with his second career Cup Series victory, a season sweep for the number 45 team at 2311 Racing. Bubba Wallace's first victory since his Talladega win last year, his first win in the next-gen car. His team co-owner, Denny Hamlin in second place, did not make it easy on him, was tracking him down in those closing laps. But Bubba Wallace went up there during an extended green flag run, tracked down Alex Bowman, who had one of the fastest cars of the race, and just pulled off the victory there. So no doubt going to be a very popular victory from the responses already on social media. And definitely got to talk about it. So, again, we'll go more in depth into what happened in the race. Certainly the last place battle was once again another aspect of it here. So yeah, that would be, let's see here. I just need to check this one here. Yes, that is fine. Just a moderator message here. Okay. Alrighty. So, yes, my goodness, I know Confirmation07, one of our regular viewers here on this, is overjoyed, and as are many others as well. Happy to be able to do the show here on this at the immediate aftermath of his victory when he won the race at Talladega last year. That was that being a rain delayed or rain postponed race was a little bit different on that sense there. But again, Bubba had a great run here in the spring race. Unfortunately, had some issues with pit road, had to seem to pass the same cars over and over, and seemed to be a bit overlooked, of course, going into this race. Of course, everything's about the playoffs, and that's been the big story with everything. But again, a fine showing out of both he and Booty Barker and the pit crew there, getting him up there with several drivers that were really looking to, absolutely punch their ticket and not have to worry about Bristol next week. We already see that Christopher Bell has now locked himself in on points, according to the current point standings here. But again, the number 45 car getting the other win, the season sweep this year. So much has been going on, obviously, with the different the driver and team swaps that have had to happen. We still hope that Kurt Busch is going to come back into the Cup Series at some point. It brings back memories of, I know a lot of people were already asking about this, and, even in the closing laps of it, when is the last time that we've really had, the same team win more than once in a season with multiple different drivers? It used to be much more common. It used to be you had somebody that was the series champion would himself drive for multiple different teams to cobble together a season when the seasons were really long. These days, very much more rare. Definitely driver injuries, or sometimes even worse, been kind of the reason for it. Certainly this being the case here with Bubba Wallace's situation. But also mentioning here where you have the, you think back to 2002, Sterling Marlin looks like he's going to be cruising to the Winston Cup Championship. Had a great year in that famous Silver Bullet there for Chip Ganassi Racing. Unfortunately, he gets injured actually at Kansas. And that ends up kind of sidelining him for the rest of the year. They bring up the Busch Series driver Jamie McMurray to drive the last couple of races of the season. And in his second career start at Charlotte, pulls off the victory over Bobby Labonte there. You think further back to 1993, and this being covered much more on the NASCAR Scene Vault podcast there. Davey Allison driving that iconic Texaco Haviland Ford there, and Ernie Irvan being, consistently still one of the best super speedway drivers out there with Morgan McClure's effort. Win at Talladega that year. Davey wins at Richmond. Then, unfortunately, after the New Hampshire race in July, Davey Allison loses his life in a helicopter accident at Talladega. Ernie Irvan works out a deal to drive that 28 car and wins at Martinsville and Charlotte at the end of the 1993 season. So a couple different situations where you had drivers that were, running for multiple different teams, or a team that had multiple different drivers winning at the same time, but winning at the same track. That I'm not entirely sure. And I'm sure somebody already is pulling up multiple stat sheets to try to figure it out. I would certainly say it's even more rare than those situations. And even 2002 and 1993 are already decades ago now, from now. So I think that really points to how exceptional this is. And also, just in general for, his fan base and everything too. So, and to have 18 different winners. I mean, speaking of 2002, that comes right after the 2001 season where you had 19 different winners, including so many of them. You didn't have the playoffs, of course, back then or any format there, but you had some other drivers that were at the back of the field there and pulling off wins down the stretch. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think one factor that was part of that, you had Steve Park's team that won Rockingham that year in 2001. Park gets injured at Darlington. Kenny Wallace gets in the number one car. And at the fall race at Rockingham, very nearly did pull off the sweep there. Kenny Wallace had the pole in the number one car there and just missed out. He lost to Joe Nemechek, but still had a good finish in that race. Probably the closest thing we've had to this, really, since then. I mean, it really points out to how just incredible that is there, too. So, absolutely. And I know, and again, I applaud. I know that, thank you, Beast of Metal, there for posting the super chat there. And also, a reminder there for the moderation. We don't usually have any problems here in the chat there, but definitely, keep things civil here. I know I know there's always things that happen from one side or the other, but usually people are pretty cool here in the chat here. So, again, it's a tremendous victory there. And again, Bubba Wallace's win at Talladega. That was not, a lucky win at all. We talked about that on the show last year. When it came down to the end of that, rain delay that was coming down to it, even the same thing from Noah Gragson's win here at, the Kansas Xfinity race this weekend. Everybody was working within the same restrictions there and trying to pull off that victory. And there was a lot of really aggressive racing, and it wasn't any guarantee that anybody was going to be staying up there, especially back at that time where, they didn't even have a team car for 2311 at that time, where they just ran the one entry. So just, again, it's amazing how much, that team has progressed. It's great to see this year that among these different winners we've had, that we've seen multiple wins, now out of both 2311 and Trackhouse Racing. It really speaks to, hopefully, we get even more teams in the sport. It's unfortunate we have this restriction with the charter system that has, prevented there from being many more opportunities like this. It'd be great to see a larger number of teams and all of them really going for it here. But unfortunately, that's kind of the situation where they have to either count on a team losing their charter or selling it and having that constant turnover there. But again, I think that, it really, it's just an impressive win. I mean, I really got to say, it really looked like we had all those cautions in the early part of the race. And of course, including Kevin Harvick being involved in the first serious wreck at the beginning of this. Seemed like we were going to have a situation very similar to Fontana back in February, or even the spring Kansas race, where you had a lot of tire failures that were just going to be stranding cars out there or suffering enough damage underneath their cars that they weren't going to be a factor. And, we had, but during all of that, you still had some drivers that were very clearly in command. Alex Bowman with one of his best runs that it seems like he's had in months. Obviously, he's a driver that's earned his own playoff spot and got his way in there. But it seems like it's been forever since we've seen the 48 car be nearly this strong as we saw in today's race. Christopher Bell, a little bit less surprising. He's been very good, basically about the same time that Bubba was really improving before the playoffs here and kind of getting some momentum going and pulling off his win back at New Hampshire earlier this year. Both of them seem to have some of the best cars out there. Denny Hamlin was kind of coming on at the end with his different tire strategy. It was a very challenging race and really the caliber of drivers that were struggling during this race here and, having contact with the outside wall and not being able to bounce back from it really speaks to it there too. So just a wild set of circumstances. And now at this point, we're just we got 8 more races to go this season. We could very easily have the entire round of 16 won by non-playoff drivers. Truex and Blaney still have not won. Both of them, especially Blaney, seem to have really good runs at Bristol. So anything else is possible in that sense here. coming up next week. I mean, I guess, well, in the case of Blaney, wouldn't be a non-playoff driver, but a driver that hasn't had a win this year. Get up to 19 and then, is 20 a possibility? Who knows? It's just kind of amazing. And it comes at the same time here. It's nice that this is the storyline coming after the very clear frustrations that were happening last week at Darlington with issues with the safety of the car. Of course, Kevin Harvick being very outspoken about the fire that happened inside his car, very similar to the fires that were suffered by other drivers earlier this year. It was good that we didn't really see that today. We still saw some pretty solid hits. I was a little disappointed in the interview with Harvick that they didn't really ask about, the level of the impact, if that was as serious as some of these other ones. Obviously, we've seen situations with driver's side impacts that have been very serious. But in the particular case with Harvick's situation here, again, not seeing, cockpit fires or anything like that. We saw this a bit in the truck race. We'll definitely get into that when we talk about the truck race and the Xfinity race here too. But it was good to see that there was some progress there. Some effort and I liked seeing that Pockrass was tweeting a lot of the updates here about what changes were going to be made, to these cars and some transparency there. So I'm glad to see some progress being made. It makes me wonder how much of that is, how many changes were to be being made behind the scenes and we just didn't hear about it. Or how much of this information is now, finally being revealed now. I have a hard time believing that Pockrass, wouldn't have had that information earlier if that was happening. So I can only conclude that, there's been a change here and that they're actually being, responsive to these concerns. Hopefully, with Bubba Wallace himself. I mean, one of the other aspects of this story is Bubba has had some of the hardest hits of any of the drivers out there this year. He's been just as outspoken as Harvick has been in a lot of these interviews. Certainly his rear ender that he had at Daytona, the accident he had at Atlanta that he said was worse than his Pocono wreck. To see him come back from those and pull off this victory too. It's just, that's I think what's going to be fun about, writing about this story and discussing it going forward is just how many aspects of it, really compound on each other, besides just plain old him getting his second victory and doing it at a track as challenging as Kansas with the added scrutiny much more towards playoff drivers. So that's really going to be interesting going forward there. So, absolutely tremendous victory there for Bubba Wallace, showing in the results here, victory by just 1 second over Denny Hamlin, who was, kind of reeling him in. I know people are going to be, throwing questions around saying like, oh, Denny Hamlin let him win. I don't buy that at all. And I know Denny was very outspoken about that in the post-race interview. If he wasn't going to be going for the win, he wouldn't have not only passed Christopher Bell, but opened up a nearly 3-second advantage on Bell there at the end. Bell finishing 3.718 seconds back of the leader at the finish there. He was definitely closing. And if there was at all any chance that he could punch his ticket and not have to worry about next week, although he's very good in the points compared to a lot of the drivers that have struggled and continued to struggle in the race today, if there was at all a chance of him pulling off the victory, you better believe he was going to go for it there. I think it's much like talking with Derek Cope for the book. He says that, I asked him about like if he ever noticed the Days of Thunder cars out there, and he told me the kind of the race car mentality is they're just another car. You don't really think about this driver or this paint scheme or anything like that. It's just who you got to beat. Obviously, in that case, those cars were unscored, but it just shows like, I think the driver mentality is just, how much you focus on it. And, I'm sure, there could probably be some thought in there, but I don't know if there's that much room for thought in there to say, wow, this is going to be great. Bubba Wallace is going to win at Kansas and it'll be a great bounce back in the season sweep. I don't know if that thought was even in Denny Hamlin's head at the end of that there, because he seemed to have the right strategy at the right time, just not quite enough laps to pull it off. But again, certainly a great day for the Toyota efforts, and 23-11 and Denny Hamlin as well on that. So again, Bubba Wallace, your winner, pending, of course, post-race inspection. Denny Hamlin, your second place finisher. Christopher Bell in the third place spot. Alex Bowman with a fine run into fourth. Truex looked very good in this race as well. Probably one of his best runs, especially after the disappointment of Darlington last week with that slip belt that eliminated him in the final laps. Truex pulling off the 5th place finish. William Byron was up there for portions of this one, taking home 6th. Ross Chastain with another aggressive move into turn 3 early in the race there, comes home in 7th. Kyle Larson in the 8th spot, Ryan Blaney in 9th, and Daniel Suarez, despite pitting off sequence there towards the end, finishing in the 10th spot there. Good recovery for him, finishing ahead of drivers like Chase Elliott and Austin Dillon and other drivers that are all other playoff contenders here at the same time. Joey Logano's strategy didn't quite work out as well. Tried to do something with his own strategy, but finishing back in the 17th spot. First car 1 lap down. But looking much further back, Kyle Busch just had a miserable day here. Unfortunate to see that he wasn't able to bounce back from the disappointing engine failure that he had at Darlington. He is off to a very difficult start of the playoffs, but again, going into a track where he has been historically favored. Certainly won the dirt race at Bristol earlier this year. Of course, this one is going to be back on the concrete next week, but we'll see how that shakes out for him. Kyle Busch finishing further back in the 26th spot, the first car 2 laps down in the running order. Decent runs out of some other drivers here at the back. I mean, Cody Ware and JJ Yaley, the Rick Ware teammates, 27th and 28th may not sound like the best run out there, but on the right side of the top, finishing outside, 30th or worse, or finishing further up the rankings, they're able to kind of get, somewhat of a decent finish for both those programs there. BJ McLeod, we saw him on the lead lap until, kind of in midway through the 3rd stage there when the field got strung out a bit. McLeod ended up the 31st spot there, 5 laps down. During the opening stages of this race, looked like he was in position to get a season sweep, that being of the last place finishes this year, but fortunately able to kind of outlast several drivers that did have struggles there. McLeod showing, looks like the last car running at the finish there, 5 laps down. The bottom 5 occupied entirely by accidents. Again, mentioning Kevin Harvick earlier, this is the 3rd last place finish, again, pending post-race inspection of Harvick's career. It is not the first of his career. Got some questions about that. His first was actually at the 600 in 2018, which was his first in 1,089 combined Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series races. So very impressive on that. Easily has to be the longest stretch of that last place finish in NASCAR history. I still haven't found another example of anybody running more races than that and getting his first last place run. You think of guys like Richard Petty, they finished last very early in their careers, not in their first season, but very close to that. Other drivers that have been around a very long time, like Dave Marcus, had multiple last place finishes during that time too. Drivers that have had very, very long careers. So I think it's very exceptional what Harvick has accomplished, and unfortunate that his race ended the way it did, especially with such significant damage to both the right front and right rear suspension on his car. But again, I think in this case, when the last car article is published, it really does indicate just how rare of a situation it is. However, it's still a very dire situation, at least in terms of his playoff implications going into Bristol, where he was so furious after missing out on winning it last year and trying to end his losing streak in 2021 after the infamous battle with both Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson in the closing laps of that race. 35th spot goes to Tyler Reddick. Looked like he was going to have another shot at pulling off a victory. Was your pole sitter today. Unfortunately, a flat tire in contact with the outside wall. Again, kind of thinking back to Fontana earlier this year where he had a flat tire, got struck by William Byron. In this case, no other cars were involved, but the impact very hard on that one. Couldn't make the repairs in time and ended up going behind the wall there. Ty Gibbs, collected by Corey LaJoie there, put on the backstretch wall. So unfortunately, both 2311 cars couldn't get good finishes there. But Bubba Wallace's former car number, at least from earlier this year, 23 finishing in the 34th spot there. Corey LaJoie ended up involved in probably the biggest accident in terms of car count on a restart. Him and Harrison Burton locked up. Eric Almirola also involved, a bit of a tangle there off of turn 2. Good to see LaJoie and Burton walk away from that one, although their days were ended at that case there. And those seem to be the only DNFs from this race were the bottom 5 finishers. And again, Kevin Harvick with his 3rd last place finish, his first of this season, so first in the next gen car, and that'll be part of the write-up that'll be posted later tonight. The Xfinity and Truck Series articles, we'll talk about those races as well. Those articles are already up on the Last Car page, and we'll definitely talk about that there at the same time. Let's see here. And Jonathan Field, big thanks to him for his tweet here. He just sent me a message here. This year, the number 45 2311 team swept the 2 NASCAR Cup races at Kansas with 2 different drivers. The Wood Brothers team, excuse me, was the last to do this in 1972 when AJ Foyt won the Daytona 500 and David Pearson won the Firecracker 400 in the 21. So there you go. There's your statistic there. Big thanks to Jonathan on that. Definitely follow him on Twitter. He provides some great context on that. Jonathan Field on that there. I'll retweet that on the account there so you can check that out. HB Loomis, I guess, was talking with him about that information as well. So he's got the information on that. So yes, it's been very rare, as we talked about at the top of the show here, to have a team represented by multiple different drivers winning races in the same time. I mean, again, you know, I mean, you think of McMurray's thing or Ernie Irvin's being in relatively recent memory, but you got to go even decades further back than that. And of course, the Wood Brothers have hired so many different drivers in their career, and hard to think about a driver that, you know, wins the Daytona 500 and doesn't run the rest of the year. But of course, AJ Foyt being so accomplished in open wheel racing certainly makes sense in that context. Back when things were a little bit different in the business model and so forth in the sport. But yeah, that's your statistic on that. So big thanks to Jonathan for pulling that up there too. I'm just going to check over the chat here at the same time. Yeah, Bristol going to be crazy. Absolutely have to agree. It's going to be some 1.815 seconds on the margin. I'm just seeing it on this here. Maybe it got frozen with 1 to go or something. I'm seeing 1 second on this, but again, that wouldn't be the only issue we've had with scoring this weekend. We'll talk about the Xfinity race here as well. Last time I checked there, the results still didn't indicate the proper reasons out for the last 2 finishers in the race, between having the transmission failure that was suffered by Jeb Burton's team and an engine failure, specifically electrical issues. It sounded much more like for the Mike Harmon team with Brennan Poole. Those are actually switched around on the results, which is bizarre. I wish I recorded it, but the radio report from the NASCAR officials did report that Jeb Burton was out because of the transmission, specifically the transmission input shaft had failed. That was being confirmed by the team as well. So I don't know if that's going to get changed or not. So far in the article, I'm still reflecting what I had heard on that and not what's being shown in the results. That's not the only time that there's been a little bit of a differentiation with the statistics. Obviously, Natalie Decker, you may recall, I believe it was at Kansas or Vegas last year, had that race where she was feeling ill and was unable to start the race. And there is a dispute whether that would be a did not start versus a reason out by fatigue. I still have it listed as fatigue, but again, there could be some dispute about that as well. These results always seem to get audited from one time to the other, and that's why I also do kind of this day in NASCAR history and do a lot of retrospectives on the site there, because that allows me to kind of check that and make sure that stuff is as current as possible. Sometimes new information certainly does come to light there for sure. Bubba's day was almost over in Harvick's accident, Philip Bailey. Very good point. Yeah, the incident off of turn 4, we didn't really talk about that with Harvick's wreck. The mysteries of the air and how easily it can be just, you know, kind of disturbed by the movements of these cars. I mean, Bubba Wallace and Ross Chastain had a very close battle, and this being very early in the race, them sweeping up off of turn 4, it looked like they were both going to kind of put each other in the fence. They managed to just kind of keep off of it, but unfortunately Harvick and whatever the turbulent air or whatever, it just seemed to just rip, you know, the car out from under him there and stuff him into the fence. Again, it's good to see him back, you know, doing okay there, but there's definitely a pretty crazy situation there at the same time. Let's see here. Beast of Metal, again, thank you so much for the super chat. I'll go ahead and read this again here if we got some more people here. I'm not seeing any problems in the chat here, but I do appreciate the message here. This chat is moderated, while the hope is to allow the chat to flow freely as we are best able. Myself and other mods will intervene as we deem it necessary. Keep this in mind. Thank you and have a good evening. Yeah, fair warning on that. Again, I appreciate the caution on that, Beast of Metal. You know, but yeah, it looks like I think we're doing good here, but I do appreciate you keeping an eye out. Thank you for the other super chat here as well. I see on this one, I see you retracted the message there. You didn't have to do that. So if there's something else you want me to read, definitely mention on there. I don't want you to get your money's worth here for sure. So let me get, let's see. To clarify, I meant the playoff system. Okay, here we go. Hang on, let me make sure I check that. Let's see here. Let me check this here at the same time. I guess we could talk about the Kyle Busch situation there at the same time. There we go. Let's see. Because, yeah, I think that's a different situation there with, just look at the other chat part here. I've kind of kept out of the whole Kyle Busch story here because all this silly season stuff, I'm perfectly satisfied to just wait till the teams are going to say something unless I hear it directly from somebody like right there, but I'm not really at the track all the time. So, this whole thing, I've just we haven't really talked about it too much on this show, but obviously a lot of that's intensified this week with apparently, it sounds like that he's going to go to Richard Childress Racing. They're pretty surprising for a number of reasons. A lot of people brought up the hold my watch situation, from that truck race, so many years ago. I'm a little concerned because it was reported by one person and now everybody's report is just saying this other person reported it rather than it being confirmed. I don't know. I'm perfectly happy to just kind of wait and see how things play out on that end. I think whoever gets, Kyle Busch is going to get a great, asset there. And it does seem like if he does turn out to be a situation where he's going to leave that team, it certainly opens up an opportunity for Ty Gibbs to land somewhere. I think Ty Gibbs has more than shown enough promise to deserve at least a part-time Cup Series effort, if not a full-time effort. That's going to be interesting to see. It's unfortunate he didn't have a good run today, but I don't think that offsets. I'm still, again, just gobsmacked at how well he did at Pocono when he first jumped in that car with nothing more than really simulator experience in that next-gen car, if that, really at the time. So again, I'm very excited to see what he can do as well. That's the thing with NASCAR. It's all about renewal. You got people coming in all the time, and you always want to make sure. I think the biggest challenge the sport has right now is just finding a place to put them that's not going to be putting somebody else out. Let them go out there and qualify, and if they're fast enough, they get to race and just get back to something that's at least approximating that. Because I think that when it turns out to be a really popular victory and you understand the context of that win, that's where it becomes that much more popular, and it really helps the sport. So we'll see how things turn out on that end, but that'll be another one to certainly look at going forward here. Yeah, does Monster go at Ty Gibbs? I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I would assume, but I mean, I don't know what's going on with that because they had the sponsorship with Kurt and so forth there too. So yeah. Edit for a repost. Okay. Alrighty. But yeah, the Wood brothers. Yeah, very surprising. I didn't think it would go that far back. I mean, I was almost thinking maybe something happened with the Petties because I know there was a time where, when you had the statistic last week with Eric Jones getting the 200th win for the Petties and revealing, of course, in the process, that not all of Richard Petty's own 200 wins were in the 43 car. Figured we could have maybe had a statistic there where it was one where Lee Petty ran the number, or Jim Pascal or one of those other drivers from way back then. That seemed to, if that did happen, that wasn't the most recent example. It would have been before the 70s there. So that'll be another one to kind of look at there too. Let's see here. Just thinking what else to jump on here. We're definitely going to talk about North Wilkesboro. We're going to be talking about a lot of that. Absolutely. My goodness. Yeah. Let's see here. Next gen car is a great equalizer. I mean, yeah, that's fair to say. I mean, it's been equal in some cases, but we're still seeing some of the big teams and the small team disparity, at least in what they're able to throw at these cars or what they're able to learn from these cars along the way. And I saw some questions about the Race to the Championship show. We'll definitely talk about that too. To answer your question, I was watching that, including the second episode just yesterday when they were replaying it there after the Xfinity race was called. We could certainly talk about that too. But yeah, I think that's the other thing. Oh gosh, we had the IndyCar Championship. Just a busy and crazy week to say the least. I gotta check my other notes here too. But we'll definitely get into that. Alrighty, so let's get into let's see, anything else from the Cup race here again. Let's see here, other drivers. I mean, the colleague efforts seem to be doing solid. I know Justin Haley got mentioned a couple times in this, but he actually finished one spot behind his teammate Noah Gragson being your winner of the Saturday Xfinity race when it was cut short by rain. We touched on that a little bit already, so we'll go ahead and kind of finish that discussion there too. Gragson winning the race after 93 of the 200 laps completed in that one with a big squall line storm going over the track there. But your last place finisher, Jeb Burton, in that one with, again, transmission issues being the reason the team indicated, even though engine is listed by NASCAR. One thing, again, I mentioned, I think a reason for this confusion, during the early stages of the rain delay, the garage official reported both Poole and Burton out at the same time and said, 27 out transmission, 47 out engine. The fact that those two car numbers sound the same, the fact that those were reported at the same time, and during a rain delay when there's other stuff going on, probably wasn't a high priority to get exactly the reason out listed with exactly the same driver. That's the only conclusion I could draw from it there, at least in those contexts there. But again, and I think this was the other bit of a controversy here from this weekend. Obviously, in the aftermath of what happened at Daytona, when you had the sudden bit of a cloud burst over turn one and the massive wreck that ultimately completely changed the outcome of that race and who was going to be left over to settle the final 21 laps of it there. I think NASCAR handled itself better. And again, I don't want to sound just too critical of any one thing, especially if they do something that's actually showing some progress here. Was it perfect by any means? No, I wouldn't say so. But I think that what steps that they took forward in this case, where you had this storm approaching, you knew that it was going to end the race whenever it came up there. And you had this countervailing issue of like, okay, well, let's try to get to the end of stage two, because if we get to the end of stage two, the race is official. We don't have to postpone it. We can call it done at that point. You have these countervailing interest here to keep the race going because you want to get to that point, but you don't want to have the race going while it's raining because you're going to have a big wreck and you have more continued controversy there. I thought under the circumstances, difficult though they were, that NASCAR was kind of, riding that tightrope about as well as it could be expected, to be honest. That when they had some rain, when they had just even the slightest bit of rain, when it was just spit and rain a little bit, they threw the caution, and that they had that moment, but then they didn't want to have the race end under caution, even though it was under 10 laps to go. So when they had a little bit of an opening, they didn't throw the red flag. They were going to restart the race. And then when they had a little bit more rain, when they had the 1 to go signal, they canceled that 1 to go and delayed that a little bit further. And you had a situation where they could evaluate things a little bit more. And they still had a 2 or 3 lap restart where they didn't just hand the win to Noah Gragson or Justin Haley or Ty Gibbs or anybody, but they at least gave them a chance to at least have some form of a green flag finish. And then after that point, the race was actually stopped by rain. So I think that was handled about as well as you can expect. It's such a dynamic situation. No two of these storms are the same. Certainly a big line that's just going to plow right over the track, as in the case of yesterday, is very different from something in Florida where you could seem to be clear and you just suddenly have just a pop-up storm that completely changes the outcome of everything. That's where it's kind of difficult. I liked in our discussion back at Daytona the option, and it wasn't something I suggested. It was one of you guys on this one. So feel free to pipe up, whoever suggested this. The idea of replicating the radius around the track and actually using something similar to the lightning strike model, where if you have rain within that radius, maybe not the same radius, like maybe it doesn't need to be 7 miles, but maybe if it's within 1 or 2 miles, and you can sense that, the storm is going to be approaching, or it's going to be very likely. If it's in that ring, maybe just throw the caution to evaluate the possibility of rain. And then if it moves away, or what usually does happen is in these cases where you already have rain at the track and they throw the caution and then the rain sweeps in anyway. Maybe you're also kind of giving a situation where you kind of give people more of a heads up to seek shelter, especially if it's going to be lightning as a part of it there. That might be something to kind of look at there too. I think the reason that NASCAR was really struggling with it, at least I sense that they were struggling with it, was because they don't have, again, that firm standard there. But again, I think they handled it about as well as could be expected under the circumstances there. So pretty open and shut there with the last place battle and with the race. Didn't really get a chance to get it going. It would have been interesting to see if Gragson could stay up there, although he's really been on a tear these last few weeks. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens when we get to the playoff cutoff race for those guys this week at Bristol. I have to remind myself it's not a full week here. The activity is going to start very early this Thursday with the Truck Series, then the Xfinity Series Friday, and of course the Cup Series for the 500 lapper there on Saturday night. And that's going to certainly be a big story for all of those as well. Going back to the Truck Series race here, this was kind of the really interesting story of the weekend, at least on the last place side of it there, that there was kind of a bit of a driver change over at Josh Realm's team, the Realm Brothers racing effort. Josh was originally going to be in the 33, and the 43 was going to be to Mason Maggio. That ultimately changed with Maggio in the 33 and the 43 going to Armani Williams. Now, Williams, I believe this is only his third or fourth Truck Series start, so just getting things figured out. Maggio, his teammate, very much in the same situation. It's good to see we're still seeing drivers kind of develop their skills here. But of course, you have to think back to Kansas earlier this year, where the number 43 truck from Josh's team was flagged off the track for running too slow in the opening laps. This is when Jesse Iwuji was driving it. And obviously people have mixed feelings, as I do, about Iwuji jumping back into the number 34 on the Xfinity side in this race and dropping out, just being not dropping out of the race, but being at the back of the pack, whereas Kyle Weatherman had qualified the car much better. I think the team's interests are much better served with putting Weatherman in the car. I think he's more than earned his shot to, get many more rides in there. But I get that there's a pull, for these drivers to want to, compete. If they could be a good team owner and get the assets together to put a team together. And that's no small accomplishment. We talked about Richard Childress. We talk about other guys like him that tried to become drivers, but weren't able to quite break through into either being a race winner or somebody that's a consistent contender. And then, ultimately in Childress's case, it turned out fantastic for him. I'd like to believe that in Iwuji's case, they could develop this program into something more consistently here, but it's going to take a decision to perhaps, step out of the ride and maybe refine your skills in the Truck Series or in another ride there at the same time. But again, we've talked about that on this show a lot of times here. I don't know where that's going to turn out. It'll be interesting to find out. Hopefully we can cross paths here, either at Vegas or Phoenix. We cover a couple of these races, later on this year. But I'm not sure, how much more information we're going to get on that going forward. But bringing it full circle back to the Truck Series race here, Armani Williams was in a very similar situation to Iwuji in this race. And it seemed like they were constantly trying to talk to him about making sure he could, get faster laps around the track, trying to arc into the corner differently, really trying to help him out. Obviously, with limited practice and then basically jumping into the race here, you don't really get a lot of opportunities to really perfect your line around the track. And the learning curve is steep, no matter what your background in racing is. Complicating this, apparently the team had radio issues. Josh himself was expressing the concern that he didn't have a noise canceling microphone. So a lot of engine noise was kind of blurring out his voice, telling him to talk slower at the same time. Sometimes it's just an off day. And this was clearly a case in this situation here. So in this particular case, it was very interesting, though, because in the case of Iwuji's case, I think it was about 30 laps into the race, they were black flagged and just weren't allowed to come back out there. Very nearly had the same situation with Williams, this being about the end of stage one, about 40 or 50 laps into the race here. Getting to that point, seemed like they weren't going to be able to keep going, but Josh was actually able to work it out where he'd actually be able to swap back in as driver, because of course Josh has driven a lot of these races, and certainly for his team as well. In fact, he's a defending last place finisher of the Bristol race that's coming up this Thursday. But he was able to get swapped back in there, and they were able to run a few more laps, and ultimately were able to climb out of last place. Just like in the Xfinity race, you only had 2 DNFs in that one. This being Brett Moffitt with what was actually his first last place finish in a Truck Series race, which may be a bit surprising given the fact that he's been in that series for so long, of course, being a past champion and everything. But again, another measure, much like with Harvick, of kind of a rare last place battle in that sense there. But Riam getting into the 43 there, climbing past the 22, still flagged off the track for not reaching minimum speed, but able to kind of get a bit of a better run there. I don't know if they just didn't want to be featured on the site or not. But again, I think that kind of productivity with these teams or these kind of battles that just don't get talked about, those are the stories I like to share. I think these are the ones that are interesting because it shows how the other half lives. It shows how these programs are really trying to make the most out of it. And sometimes they have to approach a race in a very unorthodox manner, something that you would never think would happen at a Kyle Busch Motorsports, or, if you're on the Cup side, like a Hendrick Motorsports, they're not going to have to resort to something like this. Or if they did, it would be like, this would be a big story, but just because it's at the back of the field, it doesn't really get talked about. And this was a bit more challenging because I was actually covering this race remotely, so I didn't have all my stats with me there, but luckily I was able to listen to the scanner there on the 43, and that turned out to be the channel to be on there. So I got that settled there. I'm glad I was able to track that because that became kind of an interesting story there. So kudos to Josh's team there. I'm sure any one position you get is some kind of an increase there in at least your share of the purse. It's unfortunate that information is not really made public anymore, but still had to be something that helped out there. And Mason Maggio and the other truck there finished a bit further up there in the 32nd spot. But at the front of the field, once again, the heartbreak of Carson Hocevar trying to get not only his first win, but to lock up a playoff spot there. Seemed like he had the right strategy. Seemed like he was in kind of a right position there to just kind of stretch things out. Seemed like John Hunter Nemechek was going to run out of time. Although when the run really started there, I mean, they were saying like, okay, he's gaining this certain amount. Sounded like at one point he was going to get, maybe catch him with 5 to go. But was he going to be able to get around him? And then he stretched it all the way to the final lap. Didn't quite work out there. Hocevar gets past, and unfortunately it's double whammy. Not only does he not win the race, but he ends up joining Matt Crafton on the short list there of the drivers outside the playoffs there. So a bit of certainly a heartbreaker for him in that particular situation. Will he get his first win? Where is it going to be? How is that going to turn out? Who knows in that case, but that's going to be interesting to find out going forward here. And again, it could be in very much the same situation that Martin Truex expressed with his team during the Cup race today, that he could be in that situation. So that would be another one to kind of look at there too. So let me see here. Oh, there we go. Philip Bailey seeing your comment, about the coverage there. It needs to get better. Yeah, I mean, it still wasn't great. I listened to a lot of it on the radio this time. Again, I was out of the house. That's why, again, I was kind of handling it a bit different. But that was just a different situation there. Again, it's that's why you got to run the races, and that's what part of the story is. It just makes it really interesting from one day to the next. You never know what the outcome is going to be. And I think we saw a little bit of that in one form or another, really of all 3 races this weekend in Kansas. If you could find one through line there, whether it's a last lap playoff defining change for the lead during a bit of strategy at the end of the race of the Truck Series, whether it's racing the rain in the Xfinity race and not knowing if the race is going to get going. In fact, to the point where Noah Gragson even went to victory lane a little bit earlier than he should have. That NASCAR hadn't actually declared the race over, but I guess NBC was so convincing in just calling it over at that time that it turned out that way. Not sure what the miscommunication was, but that's what it kind of looked like on TV there. And then I'm capping this off with Bubba Wallace, certainly making a statement there for the Owners' Championship. I mean, my gosh, that decision to swap car numbers has really paid off there for that program. Maybe they have a chance to really kind of make something happen here in these last couple of races and adding a little bit of intrigue. I've often kind of dismissed the Owners' Championship as not being particularly interesting. I think it was another bellwether of how bad the Xfinity Series was when the Cup Series bushwhackers were way out of control, and you get down to Homestead, it's like, ooh, who's going to win the Owners' Championship, the Penske 22 or the Gibbs 18? It's like, well, who's driving it? I just want to see who's going to win the race. But that's how bad it got in that series at that point. Thankfully, the Xfinity Series has really moved past that point. But that's another way to kind of look at things going forward there too. There we go. Let's see here. Oh my gosh, Beast of Metal, you didn't have to resubmit that super chat, man. That's I gotta get that other one back to you, but I do appreciate it. Let me get these other messages here. I'll jump up on that. Whoop. Oh, do we have an issue with the audio? I hope we didn't. I've been going too far in this at this point here. but I'm not seeing it here. Okay, good. Hopefully we're okay here. Bowser Jr. XD, thank you so much for the super chat on this one. First of all, today's race had a margin of 1.272 seconds, the 1,732nd closest race, ties with the 2004 Busch Milwaukee race and the 2014 Coca-Cola 600. Now that is a statistic, man. I didn't realize you had all those together. I think you were kind of touching on this a little bit last week, but I didn't know you had that put together. That's interesting to see. So that's so it's combining. Are you combining Xfinity and Cup truck races together, just like everything? Because that'd be interesting. I've been trying to think of doing something similar to that with some of my NASCAR stats because they're kind of separated by division. But that's definitely an interesting one here too. The truck race. Looking at your other super chat here, the truck race had a margin of 1.815 seconds, the 2000th closest race since ETAs. This was, or electronic timing and scoring. This ties with the second truck race at Martinsville in 2009. See, again, I love statistics like that really kind of put history in a new context. That gets to be a real fun way to kind of set that up there at the same time. But yeah, no, thank you so much for the super chats and for sharing your statistics on that as well. Piece of metal, yeah. Well, thank you for the super chat on here. I am bummed at how we got to 2 winners in one car at one track in one season, and continue to wish Kurt Busch the best in his recovery. But also, congrats to Bubba. That's how you fork the playoffs. Yeah, no, I agree. And thank you again for the super chat on that there. But I do, yeah, I think it's kind of the Kurt Busch situation. It's still troubling, and I sense that from your message here as well. That it's going week to week. And that it's, it was like, okay, it's going to be this race, it's going to be that race. We're not going to do these 2 races. And then, what's going to happen the rest of this season. And then, of course, you're already going to be thinking about what's going to happen next season. And silly season has not helped, which is unfortunate, as it rarely does. You have some kind of an injury that happens late in the end of the year. You're going to have a situation where, yeah, you're going to have drivers that are probably going to be left out of what's something that would have been maybe relatively minor if it happened over the off season, or maybe early in the year, you get a chance to come back. When you don't have that chance to come back, you potentially could have something really, it's a problem. And it would suck for somebody like Kurt Busch. I mean, you think back to Casey Kane when he had the heat exhaustion at Darlington, the very serious symptoms he was showing at the end of that one. And that was already a season where he was kind of honoring past moments in his career when he was running throwback schemes to some of his famous wins, including his last start at Darlington. It would stink for Kurt Busch's race to end, for his career to end, without being able to just, run another race on the track, or, again, just being in a situation where he can't do it on his own terms. I certainly hope that he gets another chance. Maybe something, maybe over the off season, things can kind of work out better. But it sounds like, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to make any unfounded comparisons there. Because again, we just don't know. We just don't know what's going on there. And we're certainly sending our best to him with everybody else. I know that's got to be frustrating to be sitting at home and seeing somebody else winning your car. I know it's helpful, though, that it's his teammate. And I know that they had a really good thing going there this year and, help things out. So I'm sure that softens the blow quite a bit. But, he wants to be out there. He's as much of a competitor as he has been. I remember, thinking back to earlier parts of Kurt's career when people were booing him all the time and not liking him, and him, the battles with Jimmy Spencer from very early in his career. That's been chronicled so many times over. It's hard to think of that being at the very early stages of a career that has now crossed multiple decades. And now in this latest step here, seeing him out of the car for this long, that's got to be frustrating. And I talked about this kind of in the retirement video a couple of years ago. Not every driver is able to, be in a situation where they're able to retire on their own terms. And ideally they can. I'm sure every driver dreams of having to be in a situation like Darrell Waltrip or Richard Petty, where they can have like a retirement season at the end of which, they do like a little retirement party and they trade things off. We've seen some of the heartbreak of that earlier this year with Todd Bodine when he had his last start at Pocono. And, he ended up unfortunately involved in somebody else's mess, and it wrecked his truck, and he ended up being your last place finisher, and just a heartbreak there. And you saw in his interview, as terrible as this year's Truck Series broadcast have been, Josh Sims, I believe, was interviewing him there and did a fine job interviewing him there with that. And still trying to cheer him up, saying, hey, 801, you maybe want to try it again. But it seemed like from the body language with Bodine, I don't know if he planned on running another race. I know when he talked to Ben Schneider and myself when we were over at Sears Point, he was talking about just running that race at Pocono to kind of close his career out and, be in a position where he could just, have a retirement party and then that just be it. So again, it's frustrating. It's frustrating in the sense, no driver is going to be in the sport forever. I mean, that's not realistic. Especially given the many dangers and risks that these drivers have to face. But it's unfortunate that, they can't always choose the way they'd like to, get out of the sport there. And I think that's the real, the sadness of it, really. And I guess it's not unique to motorsports. I think it's just more visceral in motorsports because you have just so many things that have to work out exactly right with not only having a ride. You have some drivers that just lose a ride and you don't hear from them again, or, again, injuries or anything else that happens down the line. And I think when a driver is a past champion and has the accomplishments that Kurt has, you'd like to believe that there would be some more, some more glamorous conclusion there. But, again, that unfortunately, sometimes things just don't work out that way. But, again, if it does turn out that that's where Kurt Busch's career is wrapped up, it's certainly, there's been no shortage of things that he's accomplished in his career, and he's got a lot to be proud of, certainly. So, I think that's another way to kind of look at there too. Audio is perfect. Okay, good. I'm glad we're okay on that end too. I think there's, my gosh, I know I've been hopping around a lot on here. We kind of touched on a little bit of everything here between the trucks, Xfinity, and the Cup Series here too. It's been kind of a whirlwind weekend here with all the action here, but we'll certainly track all of that. We'll see if do we have any other updates? I'll check Pockrass's page here too and find out what's going on. I don't see any updates on inspection here. Alrighty. It's just kind of cool seeing another driver named Wallace winning a race too. I don't think we talked about this at Talladega last year, but I'm still so used to just having something in the back of my mind thinking, it's like, wow, Rusty won again? It's like, oh, no, Bubba Wallace. It's like, okay, cool. But two drivers that definitely have had their own unique journeys through the sport. I guess to transition here to talk about also, I want to talk about the race to the championship show. I saw we got a few questions about that. I was very pleased with it so far. I saw the first episode last week and then just the second episode yesterday. And Corey LaJoie in particular, I think one thing that really stood out to me was how emotional he was about missing the Busch Clash, really knowing how significant that event was for other drivers in the field. And, covering that race in the spring, I kind of saw a little bit of that. Certainly Cody Ware and how strong he had run, even though they missed the cut for the main event, showing how strong they had run in qualifying, how well they had run in their heat race, and how excited they were for the season and anticipating being able to perform a lot better in the next gen car. But then seeing a very different view of that from Corey LaJoie and his interview, where he's just really upset at not being able to start that race, and kind of similar to Stefan Diggs watching his celebration in the AFC Championship game a couple of years ago. He wanted it to hurt. He wanted to see the race and see what he missed out on, and have that as being a positive motivator. I thought that was handled with surprising care, with surprising attention. I liked that they featured Randy LaJoie and showed the garage and his work with the seating company and everything. I thought that was the kind of thing that could get more fans to some of these drivers. And in a perfect world, you feature drivers that are on, open teams as well. I know that's been really on the decline this season. I'm wearing my New York Racing shirt, and we haven't seen that team since the spring Richmond race. But I think it's nice that at least some of these other chartered teams that maybe are ones that people don't talk about that much, are still getting featured. I thought that was really cool to see, and like what kind of program they have. And, I think it was NASCAR I don't know if it was NASCAR Man or another channel there was kind of pointing out that, there's good drama when it's a race that the outcome of, but it's produced in such a way that you're still on the edge of your seat and waiting to see what's going to happen. I thought that was handled really well. And I was very surprised given the fact that the USA Network seemed like they were going to be kind of doing the same thing as a lot of these other ones to kind of just show the sport in a ridiculous light, like they was going to do what the Kevin James show was a couple years ago versus this reality show that Austin Dillon's involved in. It's like, that's okay. I guess it's nice to have NASCAR involved in it somehow. But I think that, one thing that has always kind of frustrated me is that this sport is epic. This sport can be every bit as presented just as dramatically as any of these other ones. And again, I talk about this a lot more in the broadcasting context, but really in any produced context too. You can take something that maybe is even a relatively small moment and you can make it into like the biggest thing with the right production. And don't tell me that these networks or these production companies don't have the horsepower to literally kind of figure that out. And I was very encouraged by what I've seen so far in it. A lot of the visuals are cool. I like the drone shot through Hendrick, although I was kind of wondering at the same time how much stuff the Hendrick crew was, I'm sure, hiding before they allowed that camera shot through there. So a little bit, I'm sure, of Hollywood magic kind of getting thrown into the mix there too. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, I loved the promo they did where they set the tone early and showed like, Justin Marks and Daniel Suarez motivating the crew this year, to get into the season. And of course that resounded so much more with how much they've accomplished since then with Chastain and Suarez becoming winners, and showing, a little bit of the family life of, other drivers like Keselowski and Kyle Busch. I'm not really that big into all that aspect of it. It kind of reminds me of like the less interesting scenes of Days of Thunder, but it's fine. I mean, when you kind of smash cut it all together and you kind of, show the human drama aspect of it, like, okay, that's cool because it shows that, these guys are, again, they're the ordinary people doing extraordinary things, as Ken Squire showed. And I think it's a step back in that direction, that's showing that those drivers are still there and maybe they just don't get featured as much or they don't get featured in the right way. But I think that's really good to see. So I think that's another one to kind of look at. And I know that Drive to Survive hasn't had the most, unanimous praise. I know that there's been a lot of memes generated about like stuff that they get casually incorrect or, things of that nature. And that'll probably happen with this USA show too. But I think they're off to a good start. And it was compelling. And whatever the format is going forward, I like that they're featuring different drivers because that kind of reminds me of NASCAR Drivers 360 from like 2004, 2005. That show was very popular. I think they aired one of their first episodes after Casey Kane won his first race at Richmond, and they did a feature that kind of talked about him, and it just kind of locked together perfectly well, even though it was a pre-produced segment from months earlier talking about Daytona. Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that NASCAR needs. I think NASCAR, needs to really, just scale it back with the silly stuff. That's why I kind of talked about, this whole slide job thing becoming kind of a meme with Dale Jr. Like, I guess it's nice and everything, but I kind of got the sense a little bit with Parker Kligerman's kind of trying to elbow him, from pit road there about like, is like this a job of some kind, a slide job, baby. It's like, oh man, we don't need more boogies. We don't need more, silly stuff and all that, and because it's unfortunate. Even when you think about Darrell Waltrip's career in the booth, he was much more than the kind of more comic side of what he did. I mean, that certainly contributed to kind of the tone that Fox set back in that time period. But if you watch some of those older races, he brought on some very interesting, commentary and stuff that was well beyond that. And I think Junior is more than capable of that too, which certainly dovetails with the discussion of the North Wilkesboro deal. Have to talk about that now. Very, very excited about this all-star race at North Wilkesboro next year. Absolutely gobsmacked that they're even doing it. I didn't even think this is even a possibility, despite the funding that was given to Charlotte and Rockingham and Wilkesboro, and that it was divvied up and they're like doing something. I figured maybe this late model deal was probably going to be about as far as they were going to go with that. But then, of course, the news came out this week that they were canceling these dirt track races after that very successful short track revival that they had with the late model race and Dale Jr. being a part of it. And that was really cool. And then suddenly having this announcement that they're going to do the All-Star race next May at the Wilkesboro track and bring it back and be the first time that the Cup, I mean, not just do a NASCAR race, but to actually get the Cup guys there for the first time since 1996. I mean, I figured if anything was going to happen, maybe they were going to do a truck race. Maybe they were going to do Xfinity. Maybe it was going to be much further down the line because they got to put, I don't know if they're going to do, I guess they're going to have to do safer barriers and stuff like that. And whatever infrastructure they're putting out there. But to do this race, I mean, I'll tell you what, as frustrating as it was, and I knew it was going to be a scrum on Friday when they did the advanced ticket sales thing, or just like getting an advanced spot in line, that didn't work out. It seemed like that was unfortunately common for pretty much everybody that was doing it. I guess those 1,000 spots got grabbed up pretty quick. But I'll tell you this, if it's at all possible, if it is at all possible that we can make it work, I would be happy to go out there and cover that race there for you guys on that. So I'm hoping to make that happen. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, so don't hold me to it yet there, but I'm absolutely looking at that. I'll tell you right now, it's ahead of the Chicago Street Course in terms of possibilities. I don't think I'm going to do the Chicago Street Course for that debut. Still thinking about maybe doing the Clash again in February and Fontana as well, especially if they're going to tear that track up. I want to do those, but if it's at all possible doing Wilkesboro, that would be something. And I'm really trying to get the Derek Cope book settled before then, because if you actually look at the statistics of the last Tyson Holly Farms 400, Derek Cope was in that race. In fact, he was incidentally the final last place finisher of that race too. So that's going to be something there. He actually talked to me about that as part of the book there too. So if that's one thing I'm kind of hoping to do, if I can do something where I can make that part of like a book signing or something, kind of like we did with Watkins Glen with the JD book, that would be great. And then that would also be an opportunity to check out the mural that was unveiled in Sanford this past week. So I'm kind of getting some thoughts together on that as to how possible that's going to be. I'm not sure. I guess we could have the 600 as kind of a fallback position since that's going to be the following week. We can kind of figure things out there. But that'll be something that we're kind of looking at here. But in the short term, we're still looking at Las Vegas and Phoenix to finish up our 2022 coverage. I got to finish the designs on the magnets here pretty soon. So if you're interested in having your name printed on the magnet, definitely check out patreon.com/LASCAR on Brock. If you join any level, you get advanced access to content as well as some bonus content there, and then get your name on the magnets I put on the door of the car for those trips. So we're looking at, again, Vegas in mid-October and Phoenix at the beginning of November to complete our 2022 schedule. So yeah, very excited about that. Very excited about a lot of things coming up here too. So that'll be kind of interesting at the same time. Getting some questions about Rise of the Field Fillers. I was able to talk with Stanton Barrett. We were looking to do another interview during our last discussion here. And he's just been still just as busy as ever. I think we're still kind of in a situation where we're trying to get everything set up there too, to kind of finish things up. I think he's pretty happy with the script. He definitely had issues with one aspect of it where the sources that I used, he had a dispute with that, which is fine. I'm glad we're able to get this discussion now rather than go through the trouble of finishing the video and then leaving them very unhappy at the end of it. That's something I want to completely avoid. I understand there's something very similar, unfortunately, has happened with another YouTuber these last couple of weeks here. So I want to avoid that. But we're working that out and then hopefully get that episode up. I have another episode of Rise of the Field Fillers that's nearly done. That already has its driver interview in it. So that's going to be something I'm very excited to get together. Don't have a release date yet. I'd like to get it up before we go to Vegas in October. But again, it's going to depend on when this interview gets done. I don't think it's going to be nearly as time consuming as the last one here. But I appreciate you guys' patience because I know that goal line's been moved several times here, but I think that's kind of what we're looking at here too. So yeah, let's see. Philip Bailey, it's announced that Wilkesboro is going to be a 3-day weekend. What would you like to see at the track besides the All-Star race on Sunday? I'd like to see trucks in Xfinity. I'd like to see that. Have trucks and Xfinity be points races, or have trucks and Xfinity be, how about all-star races of those divisions? How about ones where you have the best guys in each of those series? Best case scenario, I'd love to have it be a points race because you get the whole field out there. But maybe a triple all-star weekend. Can we have like the best, do like an open race and a main event for all? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine how crazy that would be? Like, that might be pretty cool. Because I think we talked about that. I think one of you guys was suggesting this about the idea of a something where you get everybody into Cup cars and race literally against each other. But maybe the alternative would be like, yeah, do the same thing for trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. Have it be its own thing. I mean, would that be possible? I'm not sure. But maybe you could have something like that. And wouldn't it be kind of interesting to see which Xfinity teams would be able to race their way into the field, or which truck teams would? I guess you have, kind of different challenges there based on like how many different winners. So how big the field is going to be, and then what criteria you're going to use beyond that. But, that might be another one to kind of look at there too. That would be my thought. I'd love to see trucks and Xfinity there, at least to match what Texas has had, where they have a truck series race and Xfinity race. And again, in those cases being points races, I think that's plenty enough for that. Can they get ARCA involved? Yeah, that would be cool. I think it would still be nice to have the main event still be special in that sense, and certainly evoke the same emotions that we saw at a Corey LaJoie, talking about the Busch Clash here, for example. That would be great. But again, I'm not sure what's possible. I imagine if they're going to have the Cup cars out there, they're going to have the safer barriers, at the very least. So there's going to be other things to kind of look at there too. But, I think that would be kind of my vote there. I anticipate when I first heard about it, that was going to be multiple, days. I kind of thought they're going to kind of weave in the late model aspect and maybe have a late model race again and kind of tie that in there, so you can still have an opportunity for the guys that we saw at the Racetrack Revival be a part of it. I'd hate to see them just be kicked out of it altogether once SMI steps in there and kind of exerts their authority to, their sanctioning authority. I think if that gets lost, that would be a bit of a shame. But I'm not sure what's possible or what isn't. At this point, all I know is that late model thing was extremely successful. I know there were people from the McDuffie Day festivities that were part of that, so that was great. I'm glad they had a presence out there. JD, of course, had many starts at North Wilkesboro back then in his career. In fact, Buddy Harrington, and Neil Castles were some of the most prolific drivers in starts there. None of them, unfortunately, won a race there, but that was a situation where they were all definitely regulars in that garage area back then. So that would be pretty exciting. But yeah, not sure exactly how that's going to work out, but I think that would be something very exciting to look forward to too. Let's see. Let me get my notes here at the same time. I know I had a couple other ones. Okay, we talked about Harvick. We talked about the Kyle. Oh, okay. No, that's pretty much the ones, the categories I had here. Yeah, the Wilkesboro All-Star Race, Harvick, outspoken on changes to the car. Oh yeah, kudos to Harvick. I like that Harvick is really, it's silly, I think, to think of Harvick being outspoken as an adjustment, because he's already been, very vocal about anything that's bothering him. I like that he was tweeting a lot of truths this past week, including the fact that the road courses don't need to have stage cautions. I'm glad that somebody in, under the tent is actually kind of bringing all this stuff up here and getting them into conversations. So I think that would be another one to kind of look at too. Beast of Metal, I'm seeing you bringing up grocery getter as an older term for starting parks. Yeah, that's always one of my favorites too. Jimmy Means coining that from our discussions back when I was doing the JD book. So yeah, that's definitely an aspect that if you really want to talk about old school racing and even old school starting park racing, that would be another aspect of it there for you guys. Let's see here. Oh, an open wheel parlance, a grocery getter is a stock car. Oh, okay. I didn't even think about that. Something you go get your groceries with, Watson Roadster. Okay, I didn't know that. See, I guess some terms can, have, even if it's a pejorative term there, I guess, to a sense, it could be one way or the other. I know that open wheel racing isn't too crazy about stock cars in general, or at least traditionally hasn't been. I'm sure there's people that are fans of both, obviously, but many of you guys here, I'm sure, I haven't watched the whole IndyCar finale here, but so I'm afraid I don't have too much more to add from what was shown in the broadcast. But congratulations to Will Power for his championship and Alex Palou for the victory there. I'm sure plenty of discussion about that at the same time too. Let's see. Alrighty. But we'll definitely get into our trivia segment here at the same time. And we'll get that. Let me check Pockrace's page one more time here. If you guys have any other questions about the Cup Race, Xfinity, or trucks, or anything else in the news from the racing world here this week. So I'm not sure anything on that. Nope, I don't see anything else on Pockrace's page here. So we'll check out what's going on here. We'll do some questions here for our trivia machine here for tonight. So again, once again, for those of you who are new to the group here, we got a few people in here tonight. So again, we got our late 90s NASCAR Trivial Pursuit thing. We'll do some questions here. The categories, again, are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So once again, categories are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So go ahead and vote in the comments which category you'd like. And we'll do some questions from that to wrap up our show for this evening as we'll see if we get the inspection results here on the show. And we'll find out here, hopefully in short order on this. Again, Kevin Harvick unofficially has his third last place finish of his Cup Series career. That tangle off of turn 4 where Bubba Wallace and Ross Chastain were racing pretty hard for position in the top 5. Harvick now in a must-win situation for Bristol next week. And the only driver that is locked in is Christopher Bell, who has now locked himself in on points. So what's the situation for everybody else in the field? I don't know, but we're definitely going to be talking about it on Saturday night after the race there. So it's going to be very exciting. Alrighty. Ryan Idius, did you check out the backmarkers in-car cams? Thank you for bringing that up. Yes. Another thing I have to be, really give NASCAR props for. I loved that every car in the field had an in-car camera. I was hoping that they were going to be roof cameras. I think that would have been a much better option because they could actually see other cars around them and, who's tracking who and who's racing who. That would have been really cool. I think that would have been really, really exciting there. Unfortunately, they were in-car cameras. Some of them were showing the driver, like Tyler Reddick's, for example. But I think overall, it was a positive step forward. And I was watching it actually at the start. I looked at BJ McLeod's camera because I heard that he was actually going to be behind the other cars in the fields. He was going to cross the line in last. So I was able to kind of see the other cars kind of pull away a little bit and kind of track that. That was really exciting. And I'm be very interested to see what this is going to look like at a place like Bristol, where you get much closer racing, much more side-by-side racing, much more debris coming off of cars, and stuff happening a lot quicker. I think that's going to be really exciting to see next week. So kudos to NASCAR for that. I thought that was really exciting. So that was a lot of fun. So we got that all taken care of. It did help with the articles. I was kind of working on that for the Cup Series race and kind of tracking what was happening at the back of the field. So I thought that was really cool. See the comments about the Bills? Absolutely. Congratulations on their absolute destruction of your defending world champions, your Super Bowl champion, Los Angeles Rams in LA. Yes, I'm afraid for those of you that follow my Twitter feed here, I know a lot of you do, at Last Car on Brock, I can't be impartial when it comes to football. I mean, it's not the thing I cover, and I'm not going to be modest about it either. I am 7 exits further down the freeway from, gee golly, I'm glad they had a great season, even though they lost in the AFC Championship game. No. When they win, things are going to be really, really exciting. When they lose, things are going to be really, really bad. And that's just what it's going to be. So I try to be as impartial as I can with the NASCAR side of it, because that's what I know you guys follow here. I try to keep a lot of the outside world out of it for you guys. And I know that's been really big, especially this week. But when it comes to the football side of it, I'm afraid I'm going to be just, all about circling them wagons. And I was definitely bringing out the Zubaz pants that night for that game, and it was exciting as heck to watch. So that's what it's going to be like these next few weeks. And then certainly, I guess, going into the off season there after Phoenix. I haven't renewed my subscription for NFL Red Zone yet. I already got enough screens set up here for just the NASCAR stuff here, so I don't know if I'm making good enough use out of it for here, but I'm definitely looking to do it once the season's wrapped up here, and can kind of commit to that much more, and we'll see how the standings look at that point. But I think a great start to the year. I'm very excited about Von Miller. I was glad to see another good old fashioned, Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs completion. Oh man, they looked, that second half of the game was just glorious. So really enjoyed that. But that's basically what that's going to be like. Any social media on the Bills, it's not going to be the same level of it there. And yeah, I hope they just keep the gas pedal down, like I said the other day, and just keep going with that. So that's gonna be another one to look. Alexander, hey, we got you in the chat here too. Thank you for tuning in. We got our Brazilian in the chat here too. We got our international contingent here as well. I think we got. Do we have any of our Canadian viewers here at the same time? I know we've had some other nations represented in here, so it's very cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be doing our trivia segment. Where are we leading Beast of Metal here with the categories? We'll see what's happening here. Let's see. Do I live in an arcade? It kind of looks like it, doesn't it? Oh, you're talking to Death Killer. Okay, there you go. Or you're talking to Charles there. Arcade, New York. Oh, okay, there you go. I'm not as familiar with that area. I've only been out to upstate New York the one time, so that's definitely something to check out. Oh, the Bears won today, did they? I haven't even checked out the scores yet. We can turn this into the 2-minute drill or whatever. But I'm afraid that's not my expertise. I leave that stuff to Urinating Tree. So there we go. Let me see. I don't need that. Gosh, the NFL's site is so broken. Why do they need to fix that? We'll do our trivia section next here, folks. For those of you just tuned in, we'll go ahead and do some questions here. I'm seeing a couple things on the Pockra's page. Let me check that as well. All right. Kyle Busch interviewed about his spin. Okay, he's posted some of his videos. Let me actually ask you guys about this too, because I've been thinking about this, especially for coverage coming up here. Like whenever I am over at the track, I like to really I like to just use my pocket recorder and record quotes and then put them in articles. I know the movement lately, especially channels like Pockra's page and others, and also like other groups here, have kind of changed more to video interviews instead. If you guys would like to see that more, definitely let me know. Like I could make that adjustment. I've kind of shied away from it because I think it's a little bit more, I like to maintain eye contact, and then I don't want to just hold a phone in front of the person or something like that. I guess there's other ways you can kind of hold it down lower. But I don't know. I haven't been that comfortable doing that yet, but if people really like that and they want to see more of that, I can certainly do that. I try to get more video clips of like things that happen around the track too, like when a car goes behind the wall or something like that. Yeah, that's definitely another one to kind of look at the same time. Alrighty. Let's see here. Where are we with the? Oh yeah, no rush piece of metal. Yeah, I still got some housekeeping things here to come up here, but we'll see what the category is leading on this one there. I know it's been a busy evening here on this. Let me see. Oh wow. Okay. Oh, hello Vikings. Last Bro's gonna be pretty happy with the Packers game result here. Okay. All right. We kind of take a look at some of these other ones here. Okay. Oh yeah, the Washington Commanders. I still haven't made the full adjustment to that there too. I guess not many other people have. All right, and those. We got Bucks and Cowboys tonight, and we got Broncos Seahawks tomorrow. All righty. Well, we're getting down to it. Ending of the Italian Grand Prix on 6 safety car laps. I didn't watch Formula Ones, but that's not great. That's not great. That's unfortunate. That's almost kind of what the Xfinity race turned into. I got your Aussie. There we go. Age Gale 1718. There you go. if we have any British viewers in here tonight, I don't want to go too far afield here, but definitely, we definitely share in the morning with the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. I thought about tweeting something about it this week, but Twitter is just so toxic, and I saw too much just, I felt more like responding to some of the comments on there than posting something myself, but we're definitely looking to check out the services here later on. Obviously, we talked about a while back about Prince Philip on there. So certainly, yeah, I mean, again, words are insufficient, I think, in stories like that for sure. But I definitely would be remiss to not at least mention it here along the way. I understood there was some good tributes to that in the Formula One race as well. I know Lewis Hamilton, among them, of course, certainly being knighted by her. My goodness, I mean that's definitely part of it too. But yeah, definitely. In case we have any British viewers on here, I don't want to, or English viewers, I don't want to seem unmentioning of that there as well. But we'll get our mention here. Transition into our trivia section here as well. Let me check it out. Yeah, Twitter's terrible. Like, yeah, I was just like, I was thinking of posting something that day, and I'm just like, no, this isn't the right medium. I'm not sure this is the right medium either, but yeah, there you go. Anyway, let's see here. I saw somebody commenting about something about making the next gen car in Lego. That would be pretty crazy. I haven't heard anything about that, but I haven't really looked. But there's that too. Thoughts on doing a timeline NASCAR series? NASCAR fan 93-100. I'm not sure. What do you mean by that? You mean like just like a chronology, like through a year or something like that? I'm not sure, but I mean, I do have thoughts of other series. I'll tell you that, because I've been very pleased with the response to field fillers. Obviously, I mean, I get tons of comments waiting for the Stanton Barrett one, and believe me, I share your frustration for sure. But that would be the other part of it. But so there's that too. But yeah, that would be, but I am looking at doing some other series on the channel there too. We'll have some more information on that. I think after getting these field fillers episodes, I definitely have one that I'm working on that is going to be much more clear here in the meantime. So that'll be another one to kind of look at. Alrighty. So yeah, wild card with 4. I think we'll go ahead and close the voting, and we'll do some wild card questions here to wrap up the show here. Like a timeline series on Weird History Channel on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, something like that. I think we're kind of getting there a little bit. I mean, I kind of view my drivers series as kind of like that, because if I just feel like doing a video on a certain driver and I don't really have any reason to, like there's no historical connection, or it's not related to the race that's coming up, or it's just one I just have like kind of some interesting pictures of. Like certainly the J.R. Charbonneau video was a perfect example of that. That's kind of the series that I kind of do on that. So that's kind of where I have. So that would be the other one. I'd rather have the Washington football team name. Yeah, that would be pretty fun. Yeah, Bobby Wallach. There you go. Somebody like that. Yeah, something just weird. Like that could be always something. I get a lot of suggestions for the driver profile series, and I know that one's not really set. I mean, none of this stuff's been really set to like a regular schedule. A lot of that's been kind of blown out of the water here lately anyway. But yeah, that would be kind of the place I would probably put it. So we'll do that. Buccaneers, Cowboys starting shortly. Yeah. Anybody? Yeah. You don't have to stick around if we're doing the you guys the football fans there for sure. Those are definitely neither of my teams, so that's definitely not my thing. We have a call already, Racing World. Okay, we'll do that right quick, and then we'll jump into the wild card here. And yes, indeed, Bob Parker has posted 1 minute ago. Tech complete, no issues. Bubba Wallace is the winner. No cars to R&D. So congratulations again to Bubba Wallace for his second career victory, and in 2 completely different car numbers for the same team. I think that's got to be some kind of record too. I don't know if even Richard Petty did that. So congratulations to Bubba Wallace for the win. Unfortunately, Kevin Harvick now with his 3rd last place finish of his Cup career, his 1st of the season, and that will be your subject for the NASCAR article later tonight. The articles on both the Xfinity and the Truck Series is already posted on the website there for those of you who haven't checked it out. So we'll definitely talk about that. All righty. So first question for tonight. Who met Nostradamus in a 1998 Miller Lite ad after racing back in his time machine? There's a out of left field question. Who met Nostradamus in a 1998 Miller Lite ad after racing back in his time machine? Bobby Wallace is a playable driver in NASCAR Thunder 2004. I didn't know that. There you go. 45, good on tech. Bubba Wallace, officially your winner. And your last place finisher is Kevin Harvick. So there you go. Andrew, you're from Canada. There you go. Yeah, I knew we had a few Canadian fans in here. I think I really love that. And I noticed this a lot in the J.D. McDuffie book, too. I think that there's something in, and again, I've only been to Canada once, really. But, it seems like there's something culturally that kind of makes a lot of fans kind of gravitate towards underdogs, towards these lesser known drivers. J.D. McDuffie certainly had a lot of Canadian fans and supporters. I believe, in fact, one actually made his last uniform, or bought one of his last uniforms, the Leaf Safety Systems uniform that he had in his last race. I believe that was manufactured in Canada, if I remember the details correctly. So certainly, and it's interesting how that works out. Alrighty. The question again, who met Nostradamus in a 1998 Miller Lite ad after racing back in his time machine? I almost said it, but there you go. And a lot of you got it here. Rusty Wallace, Worth McMillian, Bobby Allison, Alex Bowman wins in the 88 and the 48. Okay, that's true. But like in the same season, I guess you can have all that. But that's a very good point, though. Yeah, drivers that win, they're for the first two wins. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, Silent Spades, you're exactly right. His first couple wins. Did he win twice in the 88 and then the 48, or did he? I don't know. Whatever. But yeah, I mean, he won. He certainly had a point where he won a race in the 88 and then had the 48 after. So definitely on that. Who met Nostradamus in 1998 Miller Lite ad after racing back in his time machine? The answer is indeed Rusty Wallace, the famous Miller time machine ads. Rusty's going back in time. Said in a very high-pitched voice that I'm not even going to attempt. But fun ads. I think some of those are still popping up on YouTube, and that's always entertaining. Next question. What driver raced with Woody Woodpecker and friends on his Chevy in 1997? What driver raced with Woody Woodpecker and friends on his Chevy in 1997? Yeah, the Rusty question is pretty easy. Got an easy one to start things off tonight. So that's definitely the case. Age Gale 1718. Yeah, how fitting for the Petty family numbers. Richards won last week and Adams won this week. I like that. Very good point. I like that. And again, we talked about this much earlier when the team just debuted, but it was nice that they, they didn't, 2311 didn't have to go through the Petties to request the 45. The number wasn't getting used, but I like that they went through the step of doing it. That was nice. Michael Jordan's a good student of the sport. Obviously, as a kid, he visited Haas Ellington's shop. He's had some good interviews about that. I'm glad that step was done. I mean, I wouldn't expect that they needed to, but that's nice, so yeah, see the 43 and then the 45 win. I think that's definitely another one to check that out. Let's see. Yeah, see the road courses, the onboard cameras with the road courses. That's gonna be something. The Charlotte Roval will definitely be helpful. Some of these tracks where it's very hard to track who's at the back of the field or what else is happening, like stuff that gets missed on camera. That's where those onboards is really going to be handy. I actually was looking at BJ McLeod's when the Harvick wreck happened, but again, the angle was such that it was very hard to see, what car was involved. That's where maybe a roof cam would have. Or also the issue is that the camera is definitely too low, that the bottom third of the screen is the entire dashboard, so you don't really get a view outside the car. Seems like if they just put it on a box, like a cube, I mean, the camera is really small. I'm sure something, maybe a difference of like that much will probably be enough to get a decent view out the windshield. But I'm sure there's other things you got to look at where, is it going to be difficult for the drivers to see, or is it going to be a distraction, or something like that. But yeah. Anyway, the question again, what driver raced with Woody Woodpecker and friends on his Chevy in 1997 is the question. And we got guesses for Lake Speed and Wally Dallenbach and Gordon and Earnhardt and Robert Presley. That's an even weirder question. It is. Steve Grissom, Terry Labonte. Yeah, two wins. Yeah, 2 wins in the 88. That's right, Fontana. And then he, after he won Chicagoland. What driver raced with Woody Woodpecker and friends? And the answer is Wally Dallenbach. I was talking about his car from Suzuka. Wally Dallenbach is the correct answer. Inspection clear. Vijayski, thank you, No Tires, Just Gas. Yes, we did get the confirmation. Bubba Wallace is officially your winner. And Kevin Harvick, officially your last place finisher. So again, features on that later tonight for you guys there. So again, congratulations, Bubba Wallace and the 2311 team. All right. Let's see here. Do a couple more questions here. Next question. How many degrees does a driver spin in a bootlegger's turn? By the way, Charles Peterson Jr., I think you were the first one to get Dallenbach on that last question. Looks like it. Yeah, there you go. How many degrees does a driver spin in a bootlegger's turn? That is our next question. Yeah, Woody on Wally's car. Yeah, I know the Woody Woodpecker with Rick Mast definitely comes to mind. That was the one where, yeah, he went the whole season without a DNF. That was pretty crazy. How many degrees does a driver spin in a bootlegger's turn? When did Harvick most recently finish last? Actually, this next week's venue is Bristol in 2019, so almost 3 years. Well, actually more than 3 years, because Bristol was back in August back then. So it's been more than 3 years since he finished last in a Cup Series race. How many degrees does a driver spin in a bootlegger's turn? We got guesses for 180, 375, 75, 69, nice, 360, 1325, okay. The answer is 180. Pulling a 180 is the correct answer. Joey Fairbanks, I think you were the first one on that one. All righty. So we do again have confirmation on that. Somebody playing a clip from my Denny Hamlin likes the movie Driven video. Yeah, there we go. I don't know. That video was fun to put together. Alrighty. Oh, yeah, Earnhardt and Pearson, 1970. Oh, okay, here we go. It's the fourth time the drivers. Okay. Oh, gosh, I completely forgot about 1979. Yeah, 1979, Dale Earnhardt won his first race at Bristol. And that same year, he got injured and didn't run the Southern 500, and David Pearson drove his car and won in the number 2 car. So that's another one. So thank you to Dustin Albino, I believe, for messaging that. Let me retweet his message there. So there's that one. Oh, he's quoting it from NBC. Well, yeah, still get that retweeted there. That's an interesting statistic on that. Alrighty. How about the first one? The first last place finish, a 2018 at the Coca-Cola 600. He had a wreck in that one too. Alrighty. Let's see. Oh, well, here's a question that's pretty out of date. So again, we're thinking late 90s questions here. So the answer on this one here, we'll see. So again, what is the size limit of coolers fans can bring to most tracks? Well, this became a hot button issue a little bit. I'm not exactly sure what the protocol is now. I guess it's varied so much. What is the size limit of coolers that fans can bring to most tracks? To most tracks is the question. Pearson wasn't driving for Haas Ellington in 79. He drove for, well, I don't think. He drove for Haas Ellington in 80 when he almost beat Terry Labonte. In 79, he drove for, that was, did I say Haas Ellington? I didn't mean to. That was Rod Osterlund's team. That's what I meant to say. If I said Haas Ellington, I misspoke. I meant to say Rod Osterlund. That was the one. Let me read the question again. What's the size limit of coolers fans can bring to most tracks? Yeah, does it mean liters? Does it mean dimensions? I don't know. It doesn't say. So we got guesses here that are liters and inches and everything. Small. Yeah, that would probably be a good guess, 611 Hornet. There you go. I would say Woody Woodpecker cartoon when he's in a 9 car. There you go. Hey, I don't know if that was part of the inspiration. Yeah, David Pearson with a different drivers for different teams. That's certainly once he left the Wood Brothers. That's definitely a big story there during the closing parts of his career, closing years of his career, rather. All right, what is the size limit of coolers fans can bring to most tracks? Is our next question. Osterlund at Darlington, but for the rest of the year was Ellington. I haven't really pulled up his stats, but maybe I guess I need to. Where was that? '79. He just had 9 starts that year. Yeah, I see the first few races for the Wood Brothers. Then after the wheels came off his car, he did 4 races for Osterlund in '79. So I do not see any starts with Haas Ellington that year. But yeah, he won Darlington in the 2 car. So there's another one. So yeah, interesting history. There's a lot of history is going to be kind of re-understood here. So that'll be cool to see. What's the size limit of coolers that fans can bring to most tracks? The answer in this is 14 inches. 14 inches doesn't mean 14 inches cubed, 14 inches wide. Probably the answer is just yes. But Benjamin Lewis, I see you got 14 cubed. I think you were the first one on that one. In terms of cubic inches versus liters, not sure on that. But yeah, Benjamin Lewis. Yeah, I think you were the only one who got it. So there you go. Alrighty. Let's see here. Here we go. Here we go, guys. So we'll do one more question here to wrap up for the evening now that we've had the call here. And then, of course, football about to start here if it hasn't already. So the question again, how many years did the Dover pole jinx keep pole sitters from winning? So I guess we're talking cup races here. How many years did the Dover pole jinx keep pole sitters from winning? You don't have to guess which years, but how many years? That is a question. They don't really measure from last visit on Saturday. Well, good to know, Benjamin. There you go. How many years did the Dover pole jinx keep pole sitters from winning? Let you guys a little bit more time to guess on that one. Alrighty. How many years did the Dover pole jinx keep pole sitters from winning? We got 9 and 13 and 23. How much do you know about Buddy Baker's 72 season driving for the Petty family? I always thought that was an interesting combo, Racing World TV. Good question. I don't know too much about it. It's interesting, especially, I wonder how much of it had to do with, Petty team not wanting to put red on their cars, because Buddy drove like the bright red SCP scheme that year. Not exactly sure how that worked out. Buddy Baker himself had an interesting career of just hopping between so many different teams, which is amazing given, his pedigree, given how, fast he was, how many races he won. He came up in the Neil Castles video with the Ray Fox deal. Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure. But as to the story, I'm not clear on that. 37, 15, 20, we've got several. I'll read the question one more time here again. How many years do the Dover pole jinx keep pole sitters from winning? So how many years did the pole winner not win at Dover is basically the question. All righty, so we'll get the answer here. So the answer for the number of years for the Dover pole jinx is 14 years. 14 years is the correct answer. And Jesse Henry, I think you were the first one to get that. Maserati 9, you got it as well. So there you go. Right on. So there you go. So, all righty. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I think that will do it for the show this week. Congratulations again to Bubba Wallace on his second career Cup Series victory, now winning in the number 45 team, a season sweep for the number 45 team at 2311 Racing, combining with Kurt Busch's win in the spring race. Kevin Harvick, your last place finisher for the third time in his Cup career, will be featured on the website later tonight. If you want to check out bonus content, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. Again, I'm going to be ordering the door magnets very soon for upcoming trackside coverage planned for both Las Vegas and Phoenix as we get later into the playoffs this season. Check out my Twitter feed at LastCarOnBrock. Check out other videos on this channel here. And in the meantime, our next race is going to be at Bristol for the conclusion of the round of 16. We're going to see who's going to make the cut and who will not. Kevin Harvick in a must-win situation now after two disastrous runs, both at Kansas and last week at Darlington. And we'll see how things shake out on that end. And then after the show, about 15 minutes after the checkered flag, we'll do a discussion there. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a good evening, everyone.